The United States was built on a declaration of liberty and self-government. Yet at that same moment, millions of enslaved people lived in bondage within its borders. In the South, the economy relied on this system. As cotton became massively profitable, forced labor became the engine of Southern wealth. As the nation expanded westward, it absorbed new territories, forcing the question, would new states allow slavery or ban it? Congress tried fixing it with math, passing the Missouri Compromise of 1820 and Compromise of 1850, drawing lines to keep an even number of slave and free states. But the scale could not be balanced. The 19th century political system was unable to manage an expanding country divided by two incompatible economic and moral systems. The attempts at compromise eventually broke down into open violence. In 1854, the government let settlers in the Kansas Territory vote on whether to allow slavery. Pro-slavery and anti-slavery groups flooded the region, turning the frontier into a localized war zone known as Bleeding Kansas. Then, a Supreme Court ruling destroyed Northern trust in the federal government. In the 1857 Dred Scott decision, the court ruled that Black Americans could not be citizens, and that Congress had no power to stop slavery from expanding into the territories. This outrage fueled the rise of the Republican Party, built around stopping the expansion of slavery. In 1860, their candidate, Abraham Lincoln, won the presidency without securing a single electoral vote from the South. To Southern leaders, Lincoln's victory meant they had lost control of the national government. To protect the institution of slavery, several Southern states immediately broke away from the United States and formed the Confederacy. Lincoln refused to accept that states could leave the country because they lost an election. When Confederate forces bombarded Fort Sumter, a federal outpost in South Carolina, the shooting started. Decades of political debate and legislative deals had failed. Military force was now the only tool left to decide the future of the United States. Blue indicators for the Union overwhelmed the Confederacy in population, factories, and railroad mileage. But the South had a different advantage. They only had to survive on the defensive long enough for the Union to give up. Many in the North expected to win in a matter of months. That illusion vanished after early Confederate victories proved the Southern armies were highly capable, ensuring a long and bloody conflict. As the casualties mounted, the purpose of the fighting began to shift. Enslaved people were escaping by the thousands to Union Army lines, and abolitionists were demanding action, forcing Lincoln to reconsider the Union's war aims. Following a Union victory at Antietam in 1862, Lincoln issued the Emancipation Proclamation. This order declared that all enslaved people in Confederate territory were to be freed. The Union Army was now an army of liberation, fighting to destroy the institution of slavery once and for all. In the summer of 1863, the military momentum shifted. Confederate General Robert E. Lee launched a major invasion of the North, but the Union Army stopped him in a 3-day battle at Gettysburg, Pennsylvania. At almost the same time in the West, Union forces captured Vicksburg, securing control over the Mississippi River and physically slicing the Confederacy in half. With these successes, Lincoln put Ulysses S. Grant in charge of all Union armies. Grant implemented a strategy of applying simultaneous, relentless pressure on every front so the smaller Confederate army could never rest. General William Tecumseh Sherman executed this strategy deep in the South. He marched his troops from Atlanta to Savannah, targeting civilian infrastructure and the Southern economy along the way. Sherman's forces ripped up railroads, burned supply depots, and torched cotton stores. They eliminated the South's physical ability to keep soldiers in the field. The Union had realized that to defeat the Confederate Army, they had to dismantle the Confederate war machine. By eliminating their logistical capacity, they broke the South's ability to fight. Starved of men, food, and weapons, the Confederate defense finally buckled. In April 1865, Union troops captured the Confederate capital of Richmond. Robert E. Lee tried to retreat west, but his army was surrounded. With no options left, Lee surrendered to Grant at Appomattox courthouse, bringing the battlefield fighting to an end. But the celebrations in the North lasted less than a week. Just days after Lee's surrender, Abraham Lincoln was assassinated at Ford's Theater in Washington. the timing was disastrous. The country had to figure out how to rebuild and bring the South back into the fold without the leader who had guided the Union through its darkest years. The leader most associated with emancipation and victory was gone. The shooting had stopped, but the nation now faced a fragile, uncertain peace. During the period known as Reconstruction, the government had to balance two tasks: reintegrating millions of former rebels while establishing the legal rights of millions of newly freed Black Americans. The post-war constitutional overhaul included the 13th Amendment abolishing slavery, the 14th establishing birthright citizenship, and the 15th protecting Black voting rights. But violent resistance followed. As federal troops withdrew, white supremacist governments reclaimed power, installing segregation and voter suppression to block these new rights. The American Civil War accomplished two things. It ensured the United States would remain a single country, and it destroyed the institution of slavery. The armies disbanded in 1865, but the underlying conflicts did not. The war saved the Union, but it left behind structural fractures, setting off a struggle over equality and citizenship that continues to define the American story today.